Welcome to Inside the Win. We'll break down real-world wins, showing you exactly how strategic partnership with our experts empowers you to tackle your most ambitious opportunities with confidence. Let's jump in.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Inside the Win. I'm Trevor Burnside, Solution Architect in Cybersecurity, and I'm here today with Jason Kaufman.
Hey, everybody. Jason Kaufman, Principal Solutions Architect. Previously was in the Cybersecurity Solution Architect role, but now we've upgraded to Trevor. So happy to be here. Thanks, Trev.
Well, I'm excited to be here today. We're going to talk a little bit about AI, security, how they kind of meet together. We've been doing a lot of this lately, as you can imagine. Today, we want to give just one specific example of how we're working with clients, how we're working with customers, and what some of the takeaways that we're learning from these type of engagements, and what are some of the things that you can take away with your customers in conversation. So, Jason, today that we're going to talk about, who was the client, what were they doing, and what kind of set the stage a little bit of who we were working with?
Yeah. So the partner came over asking like, hey, I'm looking for VDI infrastructure in Azure GovCloud. Who's a good supplier for that? And they just wanted a list of three. And starting, asking questions on like, hey, this, it sounds like there's another methodology here. There's like overall goal, not just wanting licensing and build out and stuff for a FedRAMP-compliant VDI solution. So I asked, hey, can we hop on a call with the customer to kind of see what the objective is? Because I'm sure there's more things that we can help out with here. Because there's a lot of point solutions that go with many objectives, but you don't really get the overall scope unless you start asking questions. So naturally, the partner was like, yeah, let's do that. It sounds like a great idea. I think there's some stuff we can help out with. They mentioned a few other things like these FedRAMP, vulnerability management solutions, that type of stuff. So got on with the customer, and the first thing they said, I asked them kind of like what their business is around and stuff, did some due diligence beforehand, and figured out, they're in the manufacturing space. They have a lot of government clients. And the one thing that they do have is a lot of like FCI and a little bit of CUI data. So that's stuff that's a little bit, compliant, it's sensitive. And, there's a lot of now, restrictions and stuff that come in on what they need to do, on how they manage their processes, how they protect the government data and all that stuff. So I was like, we were brought here to talk about FedRAMP compliant VDI. We could do that day in and day out. We have many suppliers that could do that. You could build it on multiple different infrastructures. Azure is probably the one of the more popular ones, but I was like, what's the overall goal? Because like you have 50 employees, it's a lot of infrastructure to do here, but what are you looking to achieve here with the Azure FedGov? And they're like, we really want to get CMMC level 2 certified because we have these XXX, contracts we're about to lose. And one of them was like, we have one coming up in 8 months for renewal, and it's $23 million. Like, that's a lot of revenue that we're about to lose if we don't have this attestation. So I'm like, okay, that's something we could definitely help out with. Azure FedGov VDI is just a piece of it. But if you want to get that attestation so you can keep that contract that you've already learned or earned, we have other avenues that we can get quicker attestation to where we could build an enclave with a provider that uses Azure FedGov VDI as a part of it, but they also bring in all the other solutions. So we started getting into the conversation on, out of that 50 employees that you're looking at building out an entire Azure FedGov VDI infrastructure, how many of them actually see CUI or FCI data, have access to it, and how many are more enterprise to where like they don't need to be included with that? So we started building out kind of a strategy plan. Okay, we're going to take the 10 people that actually only, really need this type of solution, build an enclave with them, and then everybody else gets an enterprise VDI infrastructure and, a path to get to certification within 8 months. Because as you know, Trev, the first question we get is how long does it take to get the CMMC level 2 attestation, going through the entire process, the readiness, the actual certification, the waiting time for a C3 PAO to come in. And it's, about 12 to 18 months. So we're already behind the 8 ball. So we need a quicker path to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of things from that scenario that I see patterns, right, with other clients that we've talked to, specifically around CMMC. Some that don't understand, they can actually segment a network. They don't have to have everybody FedRAMP compliant or CMMC compliant, right? That's one area that we see common. A second one is that we have vendors that can address all 110 security controls required for these, for the certifications, where there's some that can do some things and not others. Like you mentioned, enclave, right? Like a GovCloud enclave. We have several suppliers within the portfolio that can do these enclaves that are pre-built, ready to go, that customers can move into, and they don't have to do the DIY scenario with a GovCloud. and do it all themselves. And especially if they don't have internal expertise to do that, it's just going to extend their cycle and being able to get compliant. And then do they have the configuration in place that's going to be acceptable anyway? So a lot of patterns here that what you're saying that I think we're seeing across the board. And especially when you're looking at the impetus of why people are going or looking for these solutions, I think it goes across the board. The more we ask why, we can start breaking down that iceberg. And sometimes what customers ask for, it's just the tip of the iceberg when there's really a lot more there that if we just ask a couple more questions, we can discover a little bit more and address what they're looking for rather than just a point solution.
Yeah, 'cause like everybody comes in with a preconceived notion on what they expect a solution to look like. They have their list of requirements. They know what their objective is, but they're only communicating a piece of that because they're asking for that one component that they need help out with. And for this customer specifically, they were already in contact with Tenable directly for vulnerability management for the FedGov side, and they already had all these other point solutions. And the first question was like, why do you want to bring all those together? Differently. Let's bring a holistic solution where everything's included and it's an easy package. And it was really an easy step in to bring in some, we had Oriento and C3 integrated into this one because those are easy buttons. Oriento has that pre-enclave that already has the C3 PAO that they partner with that can get you certification within like 90 days. Obviously there's a little bit of caveats there, but it's a quick path to certification. And once they learn, like there's more out there besides let's pull in all these point solutions. We have to manage it. We have to learn it, and having something that's an easy button ready to go for something that's highly complex. Like they left the conversation like, we want this conversation now. We want to get started on this because this is the answer we were looking for. And all it was asking about the goals and finding what that crux was, that the problem they were looking to solve rather than what they immediately asked for. So, I mean, just getting on that conversation was a home run.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another scenario or something to think about here is oftentimes a lot of these manufacturing companies or construction companies or smaller organizations that make, a small thing that ends up going on an F-16 jet, right? All of those companies that are even small, very small manufacturing companies do have these requirements if they still want to work with the federal government or the DoD or DoW. So I think that's something as well that we've been educating partners on, that ask the question about CMMC, especially if you've got small manufacturing companies in areas where there's, potential military bases or otherwise, or where they could be working with contractors, because you'd be surprised how many of those are working with the government and now are going to fall under the CMMC kind of requirement.
Yeah, definitely agree.
What would you say from this kind of engagement were the key wins that to take away of how we were able to expand this?
Yeah, I mean, literally, it came in as one point solution that's piece of a strategy. Now we brought in a service to where it's a service that has a predefined avenue for certification path. The certification path was the overall goal. So we got them on a roadmap, and a very accelerated roadmap to get that done, rather than just bringing the piecemeal solutions that they thought were going to solve the problem. We actually brought in the service that's going to solve it a lot quicker than their current expectation. And in the end, they're not going to lose out on a $23 million deal that they already have a contract for. They just need to renew it. So yeah, it was an expansion of a point solution to a full service and bringing everything all under one umbrella to where we can control the environment. And that's true value.
Yeah, absolutely. Thinking as well, kind of when it comes to CMMC, sometimes when we get into security, we have can have a difficult time talking about ROI, right? When we're putting in scenario or putting in solutions or things like that, rather than just sometimes people look at it as an insurance policy rather than an actual growth enabler or enabler for the business. Now we try to change that narrative and show that cyber is an enabler for the business. I think CMMC is an example, though, especially when they have contracts or they've got things from a monetary value that customers are going after, that we can easily show this is your ROI. This certainly is going to take money to get compliant to NIST 800-171, which is what CMMC is built off of. But when you look at the upside of what that enables for the business and the contracts that you can get, it's an easier conversation because there's an immediate monetary value assigned to those type of engagements.
Yeah, for this one specifically, it's either you get the $23 million contract or you don't. So
Yeah.
from an ROI perspective, $23 million for a yes or no equation, that seems like an easy decision, especially with the price point. I mean, if you're looking at what is it, like 30K a year or something like that for the full enclave for 5 users, just kind of math it out for a little bit for the 10, like,
Ends up
ROI
paying
is
for itself.
exponential. Yeah, easy.
Yep. Yeah. By orders of magnitude, right? And that, a lot of times when I get involved with this too, I take a look and say, how much did you make with this government customer that you've had, for maybe a couple of years? And is it worth removing that revenue, stream from your business? Because a lot of that is like, oh, looking at these enclaves or looking at, some of these kind of more turnkey solutions, people can say, well, they're expensive, right? I'm going to go DIY. I'm going to do it myself because maybe I can save a couple dollars, but you're ending up, introducing gaps, introducing, potential things you're going to have to remediate when you do an assessment and figure out, oh, we didn't address this all the way. It's not configured correctly. Um, when you look at, okay, this is what this customer is worth to my business, I would say, what's the speed to when you look at like a C3 or Oriento, kind of like you mentioned, the speed to being compliant and being able to keep those contracts might be more valuable than just doing it yourself, right? And putting it all together, saving a couple bucks, but then you're looking at a timeline that you can't really determine or define. And when those contracts are come up, you don't get to choose when you're ready, right? You got to be compliant or not with those timelines. Um, Well, appreciate your time, Jason. Thanks for being on here explaining the deal. Always appreciate your insights. Anything else you want to say to the crowd?
No, I just want to say thanks for having me. And yeah, any requirements that come in that smells like there's more to it, just rather than just a point solution, somebody asking for licensing for Azure Fed or looking for a VDI solution that's highly compliant, always ask why. And if you don't feel comfortable doing that, Trevor's your guy, or I can help. But cybersecurity professional coming in, talking to him that knows the ins and outs, he's obviously proved that. Let us help you land and expand that opportunity, because it's, once it does, you get in that service part to where CMMC compliance is an easy button. Now you're in with that customer, and you've shown them immediate value add. So yep, here to serve.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. Thanks for your time. Thanks for the insight. And thanks everybody for joining us.